So I just want to take a moment to really thank everybody who wrote in questions. We posted on the social media yesterday that if anyone had questions, that we'd be happy to try to answer them by today. And so here are those answers. Do I think Lisa should have been arrested for environmental abuse or child neglect in regards to Bonzai? I mean, I guess in a perfect world, I do think people should be in trouble for that. I mean, it doesn't seem like that's a reasonable environment to put a child in. And plus, I do feel like as a parent, there should be more, you should take more responsibility with your child and make sure you're home with them and that they're in quality environments themselves. But I don't know quite what the laws are surrounding that, so I don't know if a jail sentence is necessary, but I do think it could have contributed to his death in one way or another, even if she didn't have anything to do with killing him. I do think the environments that he was in probably contributed to why he's not with us today. Okay, so the next question is why I chose this particular case. I think really initially it was because of the passion of the people in Pekin. I had posted on Instagram if anyone had any cases that had not been solved that they thought I might be able to help with, and immediately within 15 minutes 3 people reached out. I just saw the passion and desire for the community in Pekin to have this case solved, and I think that meant a lot. Plus, once I saw Bonzai's picture, I was just hooked. I just knew I wanted to tell his story. Okay, so next question is how difficult is it to edit these, and is there more information to come? It is very difficult to edit these because we have to craft our journey of telling the story, but we have to pick pieces from all these different interviews in order to do that. We also have to be careful to protect certain people's identities. We also have anonymous people calling in information, so we have to figure out how to tell their story appropriately, and we have to navigate with them on those things because we don't want to ever out somebody who has requested to be kept anonymous. So with all that coming at us, it can be a lot and very daunting to edit these episodes. Plus, we have to kind of release information as we got it, so we kind of, release little pieces of information in an episode, which we plan on kind of divulging more of later. So we have to really think about that and what that information is and how we plan on divulging it later. Is there more to come? Absolutely. We have really scratched the surface with this. I think we're probably looking at about 12 episodes, and I honestly think we will continue to film and shoot until we have the answer. So even if we've gotten to like 12 or 15 episodes and we feel like we've told the story, but we don't have an arrest or anything that has been made yet, we will come back and tell that story if anything that we are releasing does lead to an arrest. And so we want to fully tell this story, hopefully, with an ending that allows closure for people. So the question basically is, was the skeletal remains found intact with 100% of the bones there? It was not. There were definitely bones missing, and even when they brought the bones in, they were mixed with other bones, including like the skeleton of a raccoon. So there were definitely pieces of the bones missing from the location that it was found. So the second part of that question was, could that rule out the bones that were found under the 474 bridge? And there will be more about this in a follow-up episode. We do have very strong information that is leading us to know if those were his bones or weren't his bones, and we will definitely reveal that in a future episode. So the question is, do I think DCFS failed Bonzai? Absolutely. I have no question about their failure. We have confirmed over 20 calls with DCFS. We have 2 people who are actually on site the day that DCFS showed up. Now that, I believe, is just the tip of the iceberg. I do think that after seeing the condition of that home, I think it's disgusting that Bonzai was allowed and Lisa was allowed to remain in that home. And it doesn't even seem like it was just that home. The home they lived in before in Peoria also had DCFS called on them. So I really think that, with that information, I don't know exactly what DCFS's responsibilities are, but the person we spoke to from DCFS made it very clear that there are circumstances in which a child should be taken out of the home, and he met every single one of these circumstances, basically. So I don't know what else you could possibly need. Up until the point which outrages me is that 9 days before Bonzai went missing, DCFS showed up at Lisa B's house and condemned it and told her basically until that house was clean, she could not move back in. And instead of putting Bonzai in a decent, safe home, they put him with a neighbor that they barely knew. Now granted, James and his girlfriend seemed like nice people, so I don't think there was anything wrong with them going to that home. But how is it okay that DCFS puts this child in a home that he is not even familiar with the people who live there? So once again, they didn't put him with family, they didn't put him in a trusted foster care system, they just put him up with a neighbor who was willing to take them in, which I have to give a lot of credit to James and his girlfriend, because that was really nice that they were willing to take them in. But at the same time, DCFS should have looked into that home, and should they have been there. So yes, I absolutely think DCFS dropped the ball, and I absolutely think that someone needs to go in and take a hard look at that system. Okay, so this question gets a little more personal. The person is actually asking about my childhood and if it had any correlation to kind of how Bonzai's was, or if I lived more of an idyllic childhood. I did. I was very blessed. I lived a very idyllic childhood. I've been very blessed and lucky my whole life, and I think that's probably why I'm so passionate about this, is that I feel like every kid deserves a chance, and although I've been handed every opportunity, I know that other people are not. So I'd like to fight for some of those people who don't have a voice, because I have been given so much in my life that I feel like I have the ability to possibly try to help where I can. So the next question is how this has impacted me. You know, it's tough, because we hear stories every single day that are, you know, a lot of times revolve around the worst days of somebody's life. So it is about processing that and taking it in. I do feel like I've built up a healthy barrier where, although I'm able to hear those things and process them, I don't really take them in. And so I feel like I look at this more from a factual standpoint instead of the actual trauma that's involved in it. And I think it's the only way you can go through this, is to look at it that way, because if you actually let all these stories sink in and the horror sink in, I think it would destroy a person. So it really is just about looking at it from a factual point of view and seeing if I can lend some help in it. Okay, so the question is this story how I envisioned it would play out, or has it changed since we've gotten in more information and different leads? And I would say it's changed so much. I definitely did not recognize what exactly I was stepping into. The good news is that it has made me even more passionate about doing this kind of work. So we have 2 other cases in the works right now. And I think that that's a testament to really trying to get to the bottom of some of this. So although it didn't stay on the track I thought it would, it actually got me more passionate about it, and realized like how many stories out there need to be told and need to have a second look taken into them to see if there's any help that we can offer in these cases. So this next question is asking about if I've reached out to certain people. The truancy officer is the first question on there. I have not reached out to the truancy officer. That would actually be a great person to talk to. The thing about the truancy officer, though, is they did see him on the 17th, but they never saw him on the 18th. And it's the 18th is that we're really concerned with here, so that is why I hadn't reached out to the truancy officer. But it still might just be a good person to talk to let me know what happened the day prior to him going missing. The bus driver, it would be a great person. I have not reached out to them yet, but that would be one more person to clarify that Bonzai was alive on the morning of the 18th. I have not personally spoken with the Butts, but we do have a social media post from the Butts, and I did have somebody who was connected to that family who did do a texting with the family, who did get me information. Now, the Butts were unaware that that's what was happening, but I did feel really good about the fact that Bonzai was at the house that night after seeing those text messages go back and forth. The clairvoyant, yes, we absolutely spoke to the clairvoyant, and they will be on the next episode, so stay tuned. Trucks for Kids, we have spoke to 3 or 4 members of Trucks for Kids. They are all under strict NDAs, but we do talk about that in the next episode, and we do talk about what we've talked to them about. So yes, we have talked to them. It's just they can't go on the record, and they've asked to remain anonymous because of their NDAs. Okay, and then the last question is, have we talked to the investigators on the case? Yes, we did talk to the Chief of Police Dossie and Rainey, who is the lead investigator on the case. They were very polite to us. We did have maybe about an hour-long meeting. Obviously, they were not forthcoming with us, which they were protecting the information they had, which I completely understand. But I found them to be pleasant, and they didn't seem negative about what we were doing at all. They wished us the best of luck, but it was just very clear that we weren't going to be able to be exchanging information with them. So the question was, have we tried to reach out to Keith Brackett? Absolutely, we've tried to reach out to him. I very much wanted to speak to Keith Brackett. We had to send a letter because he was in a corrections institution, so we have not heard back. We do plan on potentially trying to reach out more. I do think he's such an important part of this case, and I would love to hear what he has to say. So we are still trying to do that. I definitely believe Bonzai was murdered. I don't think he died of natural causes or from exposure. If you actually look at the evidence that was found where the skeletal remains were found, it is very clear that a murder had taken place. which we'll get into in a future episode. And I do understand why people continue to ask that question, and we will go into why we definitely believe he was murdered. The cause of Bonzai's death, according to the medical examiner at the time, was homicidal violence and strangulation. And so I think a lot of people are like, how can you tell if someone's been strangled from the bones? And I think it was not just the bones, but it was what was found with the bones. And we're going to go into that in future episodes. But I do think there's very compelling evidence to say that Bonzai was strangled from what was found with him. Okay, so we have another question here about the clairvoyant and if he should be a suspect. And we definitely, in the next episode, will clear up a lot of that. So please keep watching, and we'll have that in the next actual episode of the series. Okay, so the question is, what's my opinion on how the police handled things in the beginning and now? My opinion in the beginning is I do feel like I have a little disappointment over the fact that he was considered a runaway for as long as he was, and I feel like they let some valuable tips kind of slip by, because if Bonzai was alive for a couple days after he went missing, I think there was a chance that he could have been found. Also, though, you do have somebody who had the cops called on them many times. So when I started to look into what police have to do to consider somebody missing or a runaway, it does feel like they followed protocol on that. It is unfortunate, and I wish that they had done more, especially when they saw the conditions that he was living in. I feel like more should have been done. As far as the investigation now, they do seem to still be taking in every tip. I do feel like they were sincere when they said they were looking into all the tips that were coming in. So I don't have a lot of one-on-one experience with them, but I do feel like they also want to find out what happened to Bonzai. But I do have an understanding of why the community was frustrated in the beginning. Okay, so this next one is, what do I think the police's opinion of my investigation is? You know, I'm not really sure what they think of that. I mean, when we originally talked to Rainey and Dossie, they didn't say anything negative about us doing this. So I believe maybe they're neutral on it. I do feel like a lot of new tips have probably flooded into them since we've started doing this. So that might be a point of contention for them, because they're now having to deal with tips that they might have already looked through or investigated, and they found that they didn't have validity, and now they're having to focus on those again. So I think there might be some mutual respect, but I also think there might be some frustration, which I can understand both of those. Okay, so the question is, there are obviously a lot of theories about what happened to Bonzai, and have I formed my own theory yet? So I have formed my own theory. It is a track that I have very much been looking into and am going to continue looking into. It is a theory though, and so I am still looking at every possibility and looking down every road, but I do feel like the evidence that I have in regards to this theory makes me believe that we are on the right track, and as long as everything continues to keep coming out that way, obviously we will continue to release that throughout the episodes. So the question is, do I believe I've uncovered any information that I think the police might not be aware of? I do think I have uncovered a piece of evidence that the police have been unaware of. I did email Dossie about this, and I never heard back, so I don't know. Maybe they are aware of it, but I do think it's extremely compelling, and I'm just not sure if they already knew it or if I brought something new to the table. I don't want to be that presumptuous that they didn't already know it, but I was surprised that I did not even get a response. We are still looking into it though, and I will definitely make sure, if I continue to find the information that I've already given to have validity, that I will make sure that people are listening and taking it to heart. So the question is, have I been able to stay neutral even though I've been talking to many people who are in different groups who kind of have different theories, and they very much subscribe to those theories? If I've been able to stay neutral to that? I do think that I have been able to stay neutral, and although I talk to people, it does not mean I subscribe to their theories, and it does not mean I'm on board with their ideology. So what I do is I kind of take everything in, and then I process it, and then I decide what roads to go down. But it is absolutely no one person who has gotten me even onto the tracks that we're on. It has been a conglomeration of a lot of people who have given tips and helped. But I do, although I interview people, and when I'm interviewing them, I want to hear their version of the story. I don't try to change their version of the story. So I just listen to what they have to say, and then I can take that back and interpret it how I need to get to the answers. But I think I've been able to stay very objective and very neutral throughout this. Okay, so the question is, if I hadn't picked Bonzai's case for this, what would have been my next pick? I do have another case we are working on here in Jersey of a woman who is murdered at the Passaic water plant. And that was definitely one of the first cases on my list, but that one's been taking a little longer to unfold. So that will probably be either season 2 or season 3. And then another case we are working on has to go between Alabama and Florida of a woman who went out on a boat with her husband and never came back. And so both of these cases were definitely something that piqued my interest and seemed to both be cases that nobody was paying attention to, or that tips had stopped rolling in about them. So I felt like I very much wanted to tell their stories also. So Bonzai just got put into that mix, but we are working on other cases. So the question is, how close am I to the Robert B. case? I'm not quite sure exactly what they're asking when they say that, but if they're asking like how much longer the series goes for, I see it going for probably 12 to 15 episodes, and then even at that, I don't think we'll stop. It might be we're not able to put out an episode every other week, but if more information were to come out, we would definitely come back out to Pekin and film for that so that we can tell this complete story. But we will tell all the evidence that we know and our theories by the end of it for sure. So we have another question about DCFS here, and if the police had tried to obtain DCFS's files about the B case, and I don't know what the cops have as far as what happened with DCFS. The other part of that question is, do I think they should also, DCFS, be held accountable for Bonzai's death? You know, I don't know. It's people, I'm sure, that have the best intentions and who are trying to do their jobs. I am upset though, because it is a system in place to help, you know, try to make sure kids don't live in environments that are not healthy, and I do feel like they failed there. So do I think they have some culpability in what happened here? Absolutely. You know, I don't know if that means somebody needs to go to jail. Do I think that the system needs to be looked at and potentially revamped? Absolutely. Okay, so the question is, do I really believe the stories I'm being told? So that's a tough question, because I believe there's truth in everything I'm being told, but that does not mean I subscribe to what people tell me. So a lot of times is what we're trying to do with the show is show you our journey. So sometimes we go out and we hear a story and then we look into it, so we want you guys to see what we also found out about that. And so we will also want to either give that story credit or possibly dispel a myth. So I definitely do not believe everything I am told. As a matter of fact, I believe very little of what I am told. I look at what fits with the evidence, what makes sense from a practicality standpoint. But I think really with what the show and what we're trying to do is show our journey through this. So I think we have to still show those stories as if we were just hearing them, and then we have to show the aftermath of that, meaning what we did to dispel that story, or to either maybe there's validity to a story. And so we show how we get to, if we believe that that's true. So the next question is, if I have had people refuse to speak to me, and yes, I have, but I do find that most people are more than willing and accommodating and want to speak to me. Some of them, of course, have asked to remain anonymous and their privacy be protected. But I would say for the most part, most people want to speak to me, and they want to also help see a resolution to this. So the next question is, what made me speak to the people I did first? And I don't know if it was like a conscious decision. Obviously, I wanted to talk to people like Stephanie, Bonzai's sister, and of course Lisa, his mother's. Those were obviously some of the first people I really wanted to speak to, so I could kind of get a basis for this case. But kind of everyone I speak to, it just kind of happens naturally. So of course, somebody I talk to knows somebody else, which leads me to somebody else. So I just kind of keep going down those roads. After I got some of the main people who knew Bonzai involved in talking to me, then it was a matter of finding out what their theories were and you know, what they were thinking, and then continuing down that road. So I don't know if there's any specific order, but I do, obviously there are more important people sometimes for this case, and I do try harder to speak to them. And then some of the people who are more peripheral, I kind of just keep kind of bumping them to see if they're interested in talking. Okay, so the next question is, do I believe I can solve this case? I do. It might be hubris saying this, but I absolutely do believe I can help solve this case. And I do think there have been people who have been very forthcoming and given information that I think that the cops might not have yet. And I think that the main reason for that is maybe people aren't as forthcoming talking to the police. A lot of people involved in this have other illegal activity that they've either been involved with or are part of. So I feel like that might be a reason for them to have not been forthcoming with the cops. But I think there is a very good chance that we will solve this case. The question was, will I reveal who I believe killed Bonzai if we feel like we're able to get to that answer? Absolutely we will, but we will try to tell that story as whole as we can throughout this. And then the next question was, would I investigate the murder of 4-year-old Jeremiah Ward? I'm actually not familiar with that case yet, so I will take a look at it. And we always kind of look to see what cases we can be a help on. So depending on some of the facts of that case, I'll definitely keep it in consideration for a future season. So the next question is, have I studied other cases similar to Bonzai's, and are they usually dealt with on a local level? I do find that most of these cases are dealt with on a local level unless it goes outside of state lines or city lines. If that happens a lot, then I see it more on a federal level. So I think that's pretty consistent. And I think when you look at this case compared to other cases, even when we've been trying to garner a suspect for it, I think that really tells us it was someone within the community who murdered Bonzai. Okay, so I definitely encourage everyone to keep watching. There'll be a lot more information to come. The next episode comes out on February 10th. On the video docuseries, we do release a new episode every other Monday. So the next one is February 10th. And then we also do a podcast for those who are more into listening to podcasts, and those come out on the opposite Mondays. The podcast is direct audio taken from the series, though. We just add a few sentences so it makes sense to somebody listening. Also, if you have a tip, call it in, please. We absolutely can keep you anonymous. We will have a conversation right from the beginning about how you want to be involved, if you want to be involved. If you need your privacy and anonymity kept, we absolutely will honor that, and we've done that for all of our sources.